Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Cutter One. I am your host, Jay, just Jay, your resident troublemaker and your resident culture warrior. I hope you are all doing awesome on this lovely Saturday. I hope my army of beautiful badasses is doing well, and I hope that everything is going good as we head into the holiday season, or I guess we're already in the holiday season. My apologies for not being around for the past 2 days, or I should say not uploading videos for the past 2 days. As you know, since the channel is not monetized, I've got the day job, the grind, and things got a little hectic, as they usually do this time of year. So I didn't have time to put together some videos, but that's okay because it gave some time for some really interesting articles to come out. The first of which is what we're going to talk about now. Now, I'm not one to generally attack the person per se. As you guys who are subscribed to the channel know this. I generally will try to avoid whenever possible, attacking the person. I'm sort of, my philosophy is to go after the argument that they're making, go after their point, defeat their argument as opposed to attack the individual. I don't feel that personal attacks on an individual are something that will win an argument. If somebody disagrees with you and you just call them a name, you haven't proven your point, you haven't proven them wrong, you've just called them a name, right? But nonetheless, that does seem to be a thing nowadays, particularly when it comes to Hollywood and the show media. If you don't agree, if you don't just continue to blindly consume and just take what they give you and thank them and beg them for more, well, then the problem is you. And they have no problem letting you know. So let's get right into it. This article is, oops, sorry about that. I hit the wrong button. This article is coming to us from The Independent, which I understand may be a UK sort of website magazine type thing. And it says, as you see right there, why are there so many men in the Rings of Power? And it's by James Moore. Okay. And I'm going to say right out of the gate that I think James Moore is got issues. Okay, and let's go through the article, and I'll stop as we go through just so we can talk about stuff. It says, female characters these days do more than bring warriors their post-battle beers, but they still don't exist in worlds where they are half the population. All right, Mr. Moore, let's see what you got as far as an argument. It's the granddaddy of franchises, and yes, I'm using the male gender there because The Lord of the Rings almost completely ignores just over 50% of the human population. Really? Interesting. Okay, I would beg to differ, but women barely get a look in, with the notable exception of Éowyn, the slayer of the biggest nasty of the ring wraiths, and Galadriel. Purists nearly had fits when Peter Jackson dared to beef up Arwen's role a bit in his Oscar-winning trilogy of movies. Okay, let's stop right there. Mr. Moore, let me break down a couple of things for you right out of the gate. First of all, when you say Lord of the Rings almost completely ignores just over 50% of the human population, you as the quote-unquote journalist who wrote this article, are you speaking specifically of the movies or the film adaptations, or are you talking about the books themselves and the overall Middle Earth that Tolkien created? Because women play a huge role in Tolkien's Legendarium. Huge. I mean, just off the top of my head, you have, Luthien, okay, who Tolkien is a character Tolkien sort of was inspired by his wife, Edith. Okay, so you have like Luthien, you have Miriel, Melian, okay, who's the Maya. You have goddesses, okay, Yavanna, okay, Varda, okay. You have Arwen, you have Galadriel, you have Idril, you have all these female characters that play just as big a part as the males. So if you're referencing the books here, Mr. Moore, that you're right out of the gate, you're wrong. Okay, so then I like how he also downplays Éowyn. He says women barely get a look in, with the notable exception of Éowyn. Okay, the slayer of the biggest nasty of the ring wraiths, and Galadriel. Okay. Yes, Eowyn did kill the Witch King of Angmar. I mean, what more do you want from her? Like, you're downplaying it because, oh, that's not enough. Okay. Galadriel. Okay. Downplaying her in the films because apparently not enough. Okay, purists nearly had fits when Peter Jackson dared to beef up Arwen's role a bit in his Oscar-winning trilogy of movies. Okay, let's specifically talk about that for a second. I was there. I was one of the people when the original Peter Jackson films came out in the early 2000s. People weren't complaining that Arwen's role was beefed up. Nobody complained about that. I can say that wholeheartedly. I remember I was actually on a site that I would not be a member of now, which is the onering.net. At the time, I was a subscriber and a member of the onering.net. No, the complaints were not about Arwen's role being beefed up. The complaints were about Arwen literally things that Glorfindel had done in the book. His character was completely removed, and those things were given to Arwen. Okay, that's what the crux of the issue was. The crux of the issue was not that, oh, this woman has a bigger part to play. The crux of the issue was you literally found a beloved character and removed them, and in order to make more space for Liv Tyler's Arwen. And that's what it was. It wasn't that there was women doing more. It was the erasing of a character that was beloved. So let's get that right out of the gate. The way Mr. Moore is presenting it, you would think that, back then everyone was like, oh my God, you've got another woman in here and that's just horrible. And that's not how it went. So it's a little bit deceptive there. Amazon's The Rings of Power, the world's most expensive TV series, presented a gift-wrapped opportunity to redress the balance, working as it did from information contained within the book's appendices. Okay, and that right there, that lets you know how Hollywood sees this stuff. Okay, that the Rings of Power presented a gift-wrapped opportunity to redress the balance. That's how they view these franchises, okay? When you hear of a new, Amazon or Netflix or HBO or Warner Brothers or somebody is buying some beloved franchise or buying the rights, the options to do a film or television adaptation of your favorite book, understand that their executives are looking at it exactly like how Mr. Moore just said it. It's a gift-wrapped opportunity for them to in this case redress the balance, working as it did from information contained within the book's appendices. This gave the creators more space to play around without attracting opprobrium. Okay, which is just a nice way of saying criticism. He just wants to, I guess, show off that he knows how to use a big word. From the substantial cohort of incels within Rings fandom. So let's look at that. Well, first of all, when you're so clearly just trying to use the big college level word as opposed to just saying without attracting criticism, I mean, really, dude? Whatever. I suppose that they're paying you to use the big word, so you got to earn your money, right? Because Lord knows your arguments aren't doing it. A substantial cohort of incels, and there you go. There you have it. Any criticism, you're an incel. Any criticism of Rings of Power, you are a misogynistic, incel, racist, phobe. You guys know the drill by now, okay, and stuff like that. Forget the fact that I happen to be a married man with 2 children, but apparently I'm an incel, okay, because I've got criticisms or opprobrium, okay, of the Rings of Power. But I digress. Let's continue reading. And it may appear that things have improved. Morford Clark, who plays Galadriel, has emerged as the star of the series, having created a striking, flawed, obsessive, and perennially fascinating character, whose presence helped keep the series afloat during its mid-season sag when you wondered where on quote-unquote Middle-earth its various plots and subplots were actually going. Ha 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 ha. We also had Eleanor Nori Brandyfoot, the Harfoot Hobbit, Bronwyn, the Southland healer turned leader of her people, Miriel, the Queen Regent of Numenor, and a smattering of other supporting characters. It's interesting. There's other female supporting characters, but we don't need to mention them by name because apparently it's only the ones in leading roles that count, which says more about how you view this, Mr. Moore, than anything else. But I digress. But while that's an important improvement, they are still outnumbered by the boys. Women are underrepresented among the secondary characters too. Just look at the cast list, and this looks set to be even more true of the future. I've been getting press releases containing details of additional characters ahead of season 2. So has everybody else, by the way, you're not special. Which will probably have to wait a couple of years. Details for season 2, which will probably have to wait a couple of years for. The first of these featured 5 men and 2 women. The imbalance was even greater with the second, which contained headshots and bios for 8 actors, only one of whom was a woman. So? At this point, the incels will snarl that I am virtue signaling or worse. No, dude, I just think you're a fucking idiot. Like, I don't think you're virtue. I think you're trying for brownie points because you know who your audience is, and your audience will give you brownie points for this take, and that's fine and stuff like that. Well, but the fact that you're calling people who may disagree with you incels, which again, like I said earlier, where you're leading with the personal attack, that just shows that there's really no substance to what you're saying, okay? And it undercuts the rest of your argument, okay? Again, married man, 2 kids, okay? And yet, I'm an incel because I see what you're doing here, okay? But I'm okay with that. I believe in equality. So do most of us. But it's not just about equality. Now we get to it. The fact is, the presence of female characters makes these shows and their expansively and expensively realized worlds more interesting. Their absence is not only jarring, but it deprives us of stories needed to properly bring those worlds to life. Okay, and here's the thing. If you were talking a show that had no women, or you like a show, a show or a movie and stuff like that, that only showed women as sort of like these background, like he sort of implies like serving the men a beer, right? Then I would say, okay, yeah, you might have something to stand on there, but you don't see that anymore. Women are just as much at the forefront as anything else. The problem most fans have is that you take these franchises and you twist them and you remove things that were beloved about these franchises in order to make them conform to modern day views of this. Okay, nobody is saying that the presence of female characters doesn't make a universe or a world more interesting. I've never heard anybody make that claim. Okay, what I have heard people say is, hey, listen, if this story involves 2 guys and they go to fight the big bad evil, and the big bad evil is also a guy, if you make one of those 2 guys a woman just for the sake of making one of them a woman, that's a problem, okay? And again, not because you're making her a woman, but because your motivations are political in nature, and you're using a story to convey your political messages. And that's where the key lies. And that's where most of these people like Mr. Moore and those like him, what they don't understand. Or if they do understand it, they don't want you to recognize that's what the core of the issue is. But let's continue. It's true, the creators of these shows have just about got beyond tokenism. I doubt it. Can anyone say Arondir? It's not only Clark's Galadriel who was a highlight of the Rings of Power. I was particularly taken with the haughty Queen Regent, played by Cynthia Adai Robinson. Nazine Bonaides Bronwyn, meanwhile, had one of the more interesting character arcs. Female characters these days do more than bring the warriors their post-battle beers, but they still don't exist in a world where they are half the population, and that must also be true of elves, dwarves, and hobbits, just as it is of humans. Okay? So in essence, what he's saying is that you can buy a franchise that was written in the 1950s, or in Tolkien's case, where the root of these ideas began as early as like 1917 and World War I and that era and stuff like that. And because it doesn't meet 2022 standards of representation down the line, that it's somehow wrong, and any adaptation that adheres to the original version of the story is somehow wrong because it's lacking this representation. It's interesting, though, because they never seem to want accurate representation in other aspects of the show. For instance, okay, if you want to say, well, men are 50% of the population and women are 50% of the population, therefore your show should have a 50-50 split amongst men and women, then let me ask you this. How would you feel knowing that LGBTQIA plus LMNOP people, okay, make up anywhere from 1 to, I believe it's 4 at this point, 1 to 4% of the population? Okay. So that would mean for every 100 characters, at most, you could have 4 that were LGBTQ whatever, right? Okay, would Mr. Moore and others be okay with that? Because that's an accurate representation. You are actually representing the percentage of the population that those individuals represent. Okay, so you want this like strict by the numbers representation when it suits your political agenda. But in other instances, if we say, okay, well, then, LGBTQ people are only 1 to 4% of the population. So for every 100 characters, we can only have 4 of them because that would be appropriate representation. You go, no, 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 no. We need at least, if we got 10 main characters, we got to have at least 2 or 3 of them. You know what I mean? And so it's interesting how they have this moving goalpost when it comes to this stuff. But let's continue. This is still a problem that persists across the entertainment industry. With award season looming, this raises another point. Emma Corrin, the non-binary star of The Crown, who played the late Princess of Wales, recently called on the Academy Awards to make its Best Actor and Best Actress categories gender neutral, on the grounds of making them, quote, more inclusive. Both the Academy and BAFTA have indicated that they are engaged in discussions on the subject. Those discussions should be shelved. Interesting. Yeah, how would you make a Best Actor or Best Actress category gender neutral? You'd be Best Person Who Speaks? Like, you would literally have to do away with those. And why would you need 2 then? If you don't have a Best Actor or a Best Actress category, you could literally just have 1 category that is just Best Person who reads scripts or Best Person Who acts, I guess. But he says, Mr. Moore, those discussions should be shelved. Okay, let's see why. I'm sorry that Corinne feels uncomfortable, but taking the gender out of acting categories would make them less, not more, inclusive. If you want more evidence, look at the non-gendered awards. There still hasn't been a female winner of the Best Cinematography Oscar. There hadn't been so much as a nominee until 2017, with the second following only in 2021. It's clear how it's going to go with the acting categories, particularly when you consider the power dynamics in the industry and the continuing scarcity of good female roles coming out of it. Because just as in Tolkien's world, we're clearly not there yet when it comes to fair representation of women in Hollywood. All right, so there's the crux of what he was going for. It's interesting. It's interesting that Mr. Moore is totally okay with throwing the non-binary population under the bus for these gendered goals. And his argument is interesting. He's like, okay, when we have non-gender specific categories, i.e. categories that are open to anybody, okay, with the skills to be nominated, that women don't do as well. And therefore, we need to keep gender-specific categories in order to have equal female representation. So all you non-binary LGBTQ people, sit down and shut up. Sorry your feelings are hurt, but fuck your feelings. Which is interesting because his argument is the exact opposite when it comes to Tolkien. In Tolkien's world is that we need to change it to make it more inclusive, to make it more representative and have better representation of women. But then when you flip the argument, or when he flips the argument in his own article of, well, we can make it gender neutral and that should, sort of funnel everybody who's good to the top, we say, no, 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 no. No, no, can't do that. Sorry, non-binary folk. Y'all gonna have to wait your turn, because if we do that, we may have a year where there's no female nominees, So it's interesting, his argument. He sort of makes the argument in one instance and then wants to completely not have it applicable in another, which again goes to show what I said earlier, is that folks like this, like Mr. James Moore, who, yes, I am calling him out by name because I think his arguments are wrong. I think they're flawed. I think they're inconsistent. I think he's moving the goalposts to suit his political agenda. And quite honestly, I think he's a douche. And I can call him a douche if he's going to call big swaths of Tolkien fans incels simply because they had criticisms of the show. Well, then I can call him a douche because, you want to call names, it works both ways. But anyway, yeah, I think media like this is why YouTube, has become popular with shows, like the ones that I'm sort of following in the footsteps of, is because people are tired of this stuff, like Mr. Moore and the Independent, or Alice Dodds are putting out, where it's, you're supposed to sort of just present a story and try to be non-confrontational and neutral in your reporting or in your articles, and you clearly can't. You can't get past a paragraph or two without insulting anybody who may disagree with you. But, it is what it is. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think that, Eowyn and Galadriel and Luthien and Melian and Yavanna, and do you all think that they're not enough? Not enough? Do you think that Tolkien didn't have a good female representation in his works? Or do you think that the women are holding their own just as much as the guys in his works? I tend to favor the second option. I think there's plenty of badass, totally awesome female characters that are in Tolkien's works. And I to this day will not and will never agree with the idea of sticking X type of person in a role just to check off a box. Okay. And if you think that I'm kidding about just checking off a box, we've seen Amazon's inclusion policy. A lot of their stuff is done just to check off boxes, and we know it. All right, guys, let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you like the video, If you feel like sharing the video, please do so. It gets it out there and gets more people engaged. If you have not subscribed yet, I would hope that you would consider subscribing. We have shot past 500, guys. Yes, we did the 500 thing, which means all you badasses are totally awesome. Love you guys. It's great. And let's keep it going. Let's keep it moving. Let's build this thing up. So if you have not subscribed, I would hope you would consider subscribing. If you have subscribed, thank you so much. This is all possible because of viewers like you. I sound like a PBS commercial. Anyway, guys, I will talk to you on the next one. Be good, be safe, be happy, and I will check you out later. Bye.